Welcome. Check.
Thanks for coming here today.
All right, you know what I want to know? I want to know what you know about the next season. Do you know anything about next season?
I know the next season starts on March 17th, and I know a little bit about the teams. Okay. I've had a little bit of conversation with the 4 other teams. Yes, that's all I can give you. Yep, that's all I'm privy to. Yep.
You gotta try. Right?
Yep, you gotta try.
So go ahead.
Use the microphone. Do you have a question, Calvin? Sure.
Life's changed for the better since
So many ways our lives have changed for the better. First and foremost, I feel like I have a better understanding of who I am and my significance. I have learned who my father is and what his significant part of his life was. We've moved and we now live in the small town where I would have been raised had that been the opportunity. For those people who really have this idea of what heaven is or what it can be, for me it's very real, and my father is part of my daily life now. He passed when I would have been 9 years old, and so on day one of the race, I had kind of a poor picked on me moment where it was raining and we were exhausted and we were tired and we had just gotten a strike, and I had just found out that my father had passed. And I went outside and I was a little bit feeling bad about things, and I got this overwhelming feeling that this was not about me and that I needed to stop being selfish and to go to work and be actively engaged in the process to help others. And at the end, now I look back and I can see that it's helped my aunt and my cousins and my sister and my brother and even my biological father from heaven. It's helped those individuals have a different perspective and a different closure.
So we really enjoyed watching Relative Race. And so when you applied for the show, what were you thinking? What was your idea behind getting on the show?
Well, I'll take this one because we did not apply for the show. My daughter had just had babies. She was home with twins and just happened upon BYU TV and quickly called up JD and I. He had known that his father wasn't his biological father for about 13 years before we went on the show, and was never convinced that we were going to go down the path to find his family. I, however, was begging him all the time to do it because I knew so deep in me that there was something that was missing in his life. Not that his life wasn't great before, but I knew that we needed to pursue this. And so my daughter quickly went to work, and we just kind of laughed because who goes on a TV show? Not very many people. And we were lucky enough to have this daughter of ours who felt very inspired and very eager to also help JD in his journey. And 5 weeks later, we were on the starting line and doing something that we never had anticipated. So we weren't thinking.
I'm always curious about what your days are like. Can you walk us through what a typical day during taping is like?
Well, I'll start day one. We showed up on set at about 5 o'clock in the morning. For day one, there's about 150 people there. All the different teams have about 25 people attached to each team. And for us, on our body clock, that's like 3 in the morning, so we are tired. And we had the opportunity to learn what we were going to do that day, and we kind of got an overview of how the day would go. And we were going to change these tires on a car, and then we were going to race around the racetrack, and then we were going to be off to the race. And so that started at 5 o'clock in the morning, and then we did the tires and we did really well, and we did the racetrack and we did really well, and we got to the exit of the racetrack and we thought we were off, and they asked us to stop, and they wanted to refilm that whole thing again from a different angle, which is great. So an hour later, we think we're going to be off, and then they said, we really want to get that from a different angle, just recreate that. And so that afternoon at 4 p.m., we started our journey from West Virginia to St. Paul, Minnesota.
And I was excited, not understanding geography. I was like, let's go. And he's like, honey, I don't think you realize how far away that is. But
So they're long days, very, very long days.
I would say we woke up every day at 6 a.m. We were on the road by 7:30 or 8. Drove most of the day. Would meet our relative around 4, at least our journey, because we had long drives. And production and filming for the evening with camera crews there. So I would say we only had about an hour each night with our relatives by ourselves before we knew we had to get some sleep.
At about midnight, we would go to bed about midnight, and so we were going from 6 a.m. to midnight every day with 10 camera people in your face telling you what to do and when to not do it and when to say things and stop, don't say that yet. It was interesting.
Okay. My question is, so not necessarily on a TV show with camera crews in your face, but a lot of people are very private about their personal stories. What would your advice be about whether or not to be public about your vulnerabilities and your family and your story and sharing those with other people? What would your advice be?
That's what a great question. I think for me, I would encourage people to lean in to the parts of their life that they're most uncomfortable with. I have found that for me, when I am my most authentic, my most sincere, it breaks all the walls down and I become fast friends with people. We have an impact on each other's lives. We have an opportunity to bless one another in pretty meaningful ways. And so I would say, take a chance, be brave, lean in, be vulnerable, tell people how much you love them, tell them how much they mean to you. I believe it's our best opportunity to feel the great love on earth.
I think so many people go through things and they think they're the only person going through things. So the more honest and more real and more vulnerable we can be, there's just opportunity for connection and for maybe, just creating a bravery in other people. And so, why not be your most honest self and open to things when you can be?
Do you think we can tell the race story? The first big race story? Okay, so here's a perfect example. So Relative Race has this goal of creating a competitive environment where you're racing for this prize money at the end. And so we showed up to a media day a couple weeks before filming started, and the other 3 teams were there, and each of the teams were kind of kept separate from each other. And while they're at Facebook, they're at Instagram, we're over here, and they keep moving us around so that we're isolated from one another. And then we go to lunch, and they have the red team over there with their producer, and they have the green team over here with their producer, and blue's over there, and we're over here. And I looked at Jen, and I said, I don't think they can kick us off the show at this point, and I'm not going to do it this way. We're about to go on a journey where we're going to have some pretty significant shared experiences, and I don't want to do it alone. And so I got up and I looked at the 3 other teams, and Ray was the scariest. I mean, he's a gigantic man. I love him with my whole heart. We're brothers now. And I walked over and he was eating, and I put my hand on his hand, and he looked up at me, and I just said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Will you let Jen and I love on you during this experience? And it changed everything. And not that other seasons aren't amazing and wonderful, but if you watch our season, our group had such deep love and concern for each other, and we still do. We talk once a week. We play board games over Zoom. We've gone on trips with them. But that doesn't happen unless someone is willing and vulnerable to be open.
We got mariachi in the background.
That's one of the things I was going to ask you about. Is that unique bond? The other seasons are wonderful and they're great, but you can definitely tell the difference in your season. But I think that because of the bond that you showed and were an example of, I think it started to happen again with the other seasons. You know what I mean?
You're right. you now see all the seasons wearing each other's bracelets.
Yes.
We were the first season that the day we were leaving, we all had we had our bag of black bracelets and red and green and blue, and we all just said, why are we not sharing bracelets? And we were the first season that did that, and I think a lot of it has to do that we're all married couples, you know what I mean? We all had kind of similar life stories to that point where we were going on this journey with our spouses, which automatically helps you bond a little bit quicker. But yeah, it was a special time for us.
The day that we left, that morning that we left, like I said, there's this room full of people, producers, videographers, and everyone's there and excited, and they're all trying to tell us what to do and when we need to get ready. And we secluded ourselves to a table. We had breakfast together, and then Ray said, let's go to the end of the room and let's pray together. And so we stood in a circle. We're of different faiths, but we're of one love, and our love is for our family and for each other. And out of that came what we call now the first cousins. We're the first cousins of that season. And it's been a tremendous blessing to our lives and to theirs. And yeah, I can't say enough good about it.
I do think your example has helped teams in other seasons. I mean, even the beginning of last season when they had everybody get together, I think that
we
came
watched
from
that, and I think it's too bad that we didn't get a little bit of that behind the scenes for us, because we experienced that on our own with those teammates. And so we left that racetrack already so excited and so full of love for the other people.
I believe they saw that. And that's what
I think harder than being kicked off the show, harder than getting that third strike first, was not being able to join into the call that night. Just wondering who they met and what their day was like. I remember being so sad that we couldn't partake of that.
And then they've changed it.
Yeah.
Now that they've changed it. Yeah. I really do think it's because of you guys' example on your season. I really do. They saw that and how it helps the teams, how it helps support. You've got to support each other because you're right. You're doing the same. You've got the same yearnings in your heart.
Yeah.
The same love in your heart.
And we have to be quiet about our journey for so many months before the show comes out. So they were like, we're each other's sounding boards while we're waiting.
Absolutely.
We can all say, hey, we got together with JD's sister, and Deshay, I went and saw my dad, and Ray, I'm going to visit my brother. We were all each other's people in that 6-month period before it was aired.
I got to know and hug and touch and be a part of Lamont's life before the whole world even heard of Ray's brother. It was a pretty special time.
I don't really know if you can hear with this microphone, but so after the show, I kind of wanted to know what the experience was for the relatives that you met. Like, how long did they know they were going to be meeting you? Like, how far in advance? Like, what was their journey like before they even met you? I'm always curious about that kind of thing.
So it's a big production. It takes months and months and months to put these stories together. And I don't know all the ins and outs of what they do, but my understanding is they start with 100 applications, they narrow it down to about 20, and then they start doing the genealogical work on those 20. And then they get down to the 4 or 5 or 6 that they think they can actually build a show around, that they've made enough connections. But this may take 4 to 5 to 6 months. And then you meet somebody and it's a great connection, but they don't want to be on TV, or they don't want to fly out to somewhere, or they can't. Or their family history isn't that great, where they came from is not great, and they don't want that to be portrayed on TV. And so it is a big undertaking that Relative Race does. In our case, the fourth team that had been selected needed to back out. And they had a unique circumstance where they learned some things that they should have learned on the show, but because they learned it in advance, it kind of disqualified them for the show. They couldn't go forward. And so with 5 weeks to go, the Relative Race crew started to look for who's that fourth team. And they went to their short list of 20. And this is why I feel like heaven is so critically involved in everything about our journey, is because those 20 people, all of their life circumstances had changed and they didn't want to go on the show anymore. And so they were literally starting from ground zero again. And so Dan said to his kids and his family, we have to start praying for a fourth team. Our shows, we've only got 5 weeks until we start filming, and we have to have a fourth team. And we've got to get desperate, and we've got to start praying. Everyone's got to pray. And then a day later, my daughter saw the show. She felt impressed that we could go on the show. I told her, sure, I'm open, but I don't know anything about it. She saw someone in the extras. She called that person in the extras. That person called someone. That person called someone. And 5 hours later, our producer was calling us and saying, would you want to do this? And so we didn't have 6 months or a year to put our story together. And you know, people can say circumstantial. They can say, what are the other words we were using before? Karma.
Lucky.
Yeah, tremendously lucky. We're going to call it blessed. Our genealogist opened up my DNA. I'd taken a DNA test, opened up my DNA, said her own prayer, and within 10 minutes found 2 significant relatives, traced it up to the common ancestor, and found my dad in 10 minutes, my biological father. She called me and said, would your mom take my call? I don't want to talk to her about it. I just want her to say yes or no if I've got the right name. And I said, yeah, probably. And my mom said, shocked, she said, yeah, that's right. And then she started to expand the genealogy with that base of information. She had gone to church with one of my cousins. She could call her personally and say, will you help me find the rest of this family? She had a clergy member of a church on the different side of my family and reached out to that person, and they were able to expand. And so within literally days, they had 30 or 40 people that they could call and say, will you help us put this show together? That does not happen. And so when the first question was, how has this affected me? And what is the impact? It is significant. And my understanding and my belief in power beyond our control is beyond my ability to comprehend or discuss.
On the flip side, I think you're also asking, like, what are the family members thinking? Like, I know his sister
and my aunt
and his aunt both desperately wanted to meet JD, desperately wanted to meet him, but they were very nervous about doing it on a television show, about being on camera, about wondering who is this guy. Like, you know, it came as a complete shock.
Well, even my cousins were so worried to have my aunt go on a show, so they're like, we're in support, but don't do it on TV.
Yeah. So it was a lot of talks with the producers and a lot of help from heaven that finally convinced Aunt Linda that yes, let's go ahead and do this.
And for my sister Angie, it was more about the ice cream. The producer took her to ice cream 3 times, and 3 times is a charm.
Yeah.
Of course, when we're watching the show, everybody's watching the race part of it, you know, and seeing how that's going. And of course, everybody's going different directions, different times. As you were doing that, did you have feelings when you were driving that this is not going to be a good day, or you know, what were you looking forward to?
For sure. There's days where you're like, well, this didn't go. But then I remember specifically on day 5, I was convinced we were going to come in first place. And you can go back and watch the episode when I can't remember. I think Team Blue got first place, and I was visibly like shocked on camera. Because I remember having like a great driving day, a great challenge day. We found the relative's house quickly, and I thought, without a doubt, we are first place. And then when we weren't, I was like,
Well, and I knew for sure on day 4 we were going to get a strike.
Yeah.
I knew it because
I had messed us up driving.
Tucson and Tuscan, they're pretty close, but they're not the same. And when you go to the wrong one, it's wrong.
And luckily, Deshay had like a really bad day. That was the day Deshay hit her head.
Luckily.
I shouldn't say luckily for us.
Maybe that was divine intervention too, and she got her head
Luckily
whacked.
for us, because we went into day 4 convinced we were going to have a strike, and then Deshay got it because she was, yeah. But yeah, you do have a sense of how well or not well you're doing.
Do you hear from people? Can you hear me? Yeah. Let me know if it's working. I know. Do you hear from people thanking you for being on the show because they've learned so much about the whole adoption, or finding your family and that type of thing? Do you hear from people who
I think because we live in Utah, because a lot of Utahns watch BYU TV, we get recognized for sure 2 or 3, 4 times a month, depending on where we're at and whatnot. And we do have several people that express their stories. Either they were the one that went and found a relative, or they have an adopted child, or this, that, or the other. And so we have had some really tender moments with people when they approach us. And a lot of times they're like, we're so sorry to bother you, but both JD and I, it feels like such a gift when we are able to talk about our journey, because it was special and it was something that I had hoped for him for so long. So to be on the other side of it, it's such a blessing to be able to share those moments with people.
To answer your question more specifically, I've had old men who were my father's age grab me by my hands or my face and tell me that they've been able to forgive their son, or they've been able to forgive their own father. I've had people who have come up and said, I knew your dad. Let me tell you about your dad, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And even though it's not affecting their life from a genealogical standpoint, they get to bring those memories back. They get to have those feelings. And so, I mean, I would say since our series, our show, we probably had 500 really meaningful contacts with people, and probably 100 where we have shared tears, hugs, and sincere care and concern for each other.
I know my Jen friends on the show know this, and I've said this several times, that by watching relatives, I hope to put my kids that want to find their adopted families. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because I've watched the seasons.
Our hearts are made to expand and to grow, and there's going to always be room for those people in your life.
Yeah. One of my sons has just recently been able to find, he just discovered that he had a biological sister that he never had, and they've been doing Zoom calls, and they invited me on the Zoom call, and I got to talk to her and let her know what I knew about this time of foster care. So you're having a lot of people, not just adoptees, but people that have adopted children.
That's awesome.
Be okay about them wanting to go on that journey.
That's terrific.
Yeah, I hope that parents who have adopted find ways to expand their thought process about it and expand the communication with their adoptive children. I hope those adoptive children really take the time to understand how special an adoptive parent is and how significant they are in their sacrifice, and that they have total grace and total compassion for the family that, for whatever reason, put them up for adoption. That would be my hope.
So a minute ago you talked, let's keep you in focus. Videographer supreme here. A minute ago you spoke about hearing about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'd really be interested in hearing a little more about how it makes him a more of a person, and how you relate to him, even though you might know the bad and the ugly. I'd just like to know a little bit more about your experience.
I'm thinking of one. So we moved to the town where he would have been raised, and it's a really tiny town, 6,000 or 7,000 people. And JD was at the hardware store one day, and I'm like, what is taking him so long? Why is he not home? I mean, it's like a block down the road. He should be home by now. And he'd run into this gentleman who was close friends with Steven.
Yeah, and so he walks up to me and he just is kind of stammering. He's like, you are him. He is you. You are him. And then he notices my hands. And he grabs my hands and he said, those are the hands of your father. Those are work hands. You've worked your whole life. Tell me about your life. And so it was like we got swept up in this moment where I didn't realize time or space. And when I kind of came to, we were sitting on a bale of hay outside of a hardware store. And he literally told me about him as a middle school student, a high school student in the Army Reserves. He told me some very specific stories, and what it does, it ties you to him in a way that nothing else could. Stories that my aunt wouldn't have known, or maybe even been embarrassed to tell me. And it made him real to me, but it also made me feel like I was okay. Like the good and the bad and the ugly that I've also been in my life, it was okay. Because it's part of who I really am. It wasn't just me making dumb choices in high school or whatever. It's actually part of my DNA. We make dumb choices, and so it gave me a little latitude there, and I gave myself a little grace. It was a pretty special day.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just had one more question. Do you see the show when we see the show? Is that the first time you have seen all the episodes edited together? And
Yep,
do you have like a little watch party or what?
Day one is the very first time we see the show. We did have a huge watch party at our home, and it was kind of fun because since most of our relatives were right here close, we kind of placed signs throughout. We did a big screen in our backyard in Draper, and we placed signs around the backyard that said, don't ask, don't tell. I don't know. It was just kind of this thing where everybody knew that we were all invited to the same party, and you may be related, you may not be related, but we're just going to enjoy these moments together. But yeah, the first time we see the show is the same Sunday night that everyone else sees the show.
My sister Angie walked in, and my business partner for like 15 years sees her walk in, and he looks at me and he's like, and he points, and I just go, and he's like, and so it was pretty fun because we look sad for her, but we look a lot alike.
And then it was really fun because each Sunday night, whatever relative we were going to meet that day, we would invite their family to our home. And so we, had our day 2. We didn't have day 2, but we had our day 3 and 4. Like
5.
So, whatever day we were meeting a relative is the family we would invite over to watch the show with us.
I think that's great. Miles has the last one.
So, talking about the watch parties, you guys already know what the end is going to be. How was that handled?
We know the end as we're watching the parties, or as we're watching the show. I was more bitter than he was.
Oh yeah, I was great. In fact, and this, I meant it sincerely. I said to Jenny in the last episode that we were really technically in. I said if we
were sitting at my cousin's table.
And I said if we get the strike, or if we don't, if Red gets the strike, we're taking it because Ray has to find his family. And I meant it with my whole heart. And so when we got the strike, I was sort of relieved, not that we were off the show, but that because I have a great life. I have 6 amazing children. I have 4 amazing in-law children, 11 great, amazing grandchildren. One of the kindest, most sincere life partners, spouse, beautiful wife that you could ever have. One more day on the show is not going to change my life at all, but it could mean the difference for one of these teams. So I was totally relieved, but then it also allowed us to not have to get on a plane and go somewhere else. We could literally just immediately absorb ourselves into our new family, and I was excited and elated to do that.
But as you were doing your watch parties at home, how did you...
Oh, you mean each day that we knew the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, it was such a fun 10 weeks of our life, just to every Sunday look forward to those nights. And we were excited to watch the show because we lived it, but it was like 6 months earlier. And we lived the challenges, but you never know what they're going to show. But all those hours in the car, anytime they'd show car clips of us, that was kind of my favorite part because there were so many hours. You don't remember what was said. You don't remember the dumb comments you make about flip phones and about maps and about, this, that, or the other. So I think the car scenes, every episode were some of my favorite just because they were kind of a surprise.
I've been quoted a lot with the flip phone stuff. I've been teased a lot with the glasses. People will walk up to me and do the glasses thing. It's pretty funny.
The only thing I was thinking about is as you were watching the show, you were actually seeing what happened to the other teams that you didn't know.
So we knew who they would meet each week, but yeah, we didn't know. And the Zoom calls, or what do they call them? Our nightly calls with the teams. We kind of got a little bit of talk time before, but we weren't allowed to talk, say, did you do good on the challenge? Did you do bad? So we kind of had a little glimpse of their day.
We just really wanted to know about who they met and what the experience of that was. And that first day when I found out that my dad had passed, to see Ray and to see Deshay and Anitra, they were devastated for me, and so I knew how invested they were in us, and I knew how invested we were in them. And so for us, whenever we could have those moments on those calls at night, we kind of I think we irritated the crud out of Dan, because he would try to talk and we would talk over him because we wanted to talk to each other. We missed each other so desperately.
It was a great experience.
It was a great experience for us.
Great experience. Thank you.
We appreciate you so much pulling us in with your journey and letting us go on that journey with you. Thank you so
Yeah, I
much.
used to say to people when they'd say, "Do I know you?" And I'd say, "Well, I've been in your living room." And then they'd be like a little freaked out by that, and then I stopped saying that after a while.
You haven't said that in a while.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us.